On February 6, 2018, SpaceX launched for the very first time its newest rocket, the Falcon Heavy, which carried a very special payload that really captured the attention of the world, which was the Starman spacesuit, complete with Elon Musk's personal Tesla Roadster. Now, many people have wondered a number of things about this. One of the questions that I have frequently received is it possible for us to go and capture this and put it in a museum or something like that? And that's been something that I've been curious myself too. So the first question is it going to pass close to Earth again? The answer is yes, it is. This file comes from JPL Horizons and shows a bunch of the predicted close passes to various objects, the moon initially, and Mars and Earth to the future. And these passes are the ones that are close enough that it could affect the orbit somewhat, so they made particular note of it. Of particular interest is the 2047 pass, where we pass within just 0.03 of an AU, which translates to several million miles still, away from Earth. This is the closest that it's going to be during this entire period of time for the 72-year predicted history that they have. So is it possible for us to capture Starman and the Tesla Roadster then? Well, there are a couple of different techniques. Let's take a look at the orbit. This comes from my website, whereisroadster.com. So there are a couple of different possibilities as to how we could intercept it. Now, the first one is that we aim to approach it when it's at the closest point to Earth, somewhat like over here. Now, in this instance, the distance will still be several million miles, but we could approach it. Once we approach it, we could do a quick acceleration to match the speed and then capture it. And then we could either from there do a direct return to Earth, which would use considerably more fuel, or we can adjust the orbit slightly so that it comes back and intercepts Earth in 3 years would be the easiest thing, because the period of the Tesla Roadster is close to that of 1.5 years. And so we could set the period so that it's 1.5 years. So every 1.5 years, it'll return to the same spot. 3 years later, Earth will also be there too, and you could adjust it so that it would re-enter then and have a 3-year mission to capture it. The second possibility is a perihelion pass, where we launch when it's about the closest point in time to Earth, but we actually don't capture it until we're all the way out here. And then we do the same thing. We adjust the orbit such that we will return and hit Earth at about the same time that we would for the previous mission. So these two possibilities exist, and I have my thoughts as to which one is better than the other. But since we don't work at NASA, then we can go ahead and test these out using the wonderful space simulation Kerbal space program. And so that is what we're going to do for the rest of this time, is to test this out in Kerbal space program and see. To test this out, we're going to just try something really simple. Now, this isn't a car. It's not even close to a car, but it'll serve the purpose of a stand-in object. So what we're going to do is thrust it out towards the direction of Duna. We're using the normal Kerbal system, and we're going to try to do roughly the 1.5 year orbital period that the Roadster has, just to kind of give it an idea. And we're going to compare a couple of different ways to capture this. So I've already planned out a maneuver node here in just a couple of minutes. It doesn't show, but it's going to take about 30 seconds, I think, of fuel to go ahead and do launches there. And hopefully I've got this orbit timed right. Let me just make, whoops. Yeah, that's right, 30 seconds, so that means I need to fire at T-minus 16 roughly. And then we'll do a little bit of refining. The goal is to have the 1.5-year orbital period, roughly. Which actually makes a lot of things easier. I was a little bit surprised to find that was what the period was. Because it was so perfect. Okay. So we want just a smidgen further. Huh. I'm not quite sure why the difference in fuel was so great, but this will be fine. Now we know that the real object goes a little bit beyond Earth, but that's okay. Ah, that's why I fired at the wrong angle. Hopefully that won't influence things too much. Actually, this seems to be kind of similar to the Tesla Roadster's trajectory as it is, so okay. It'll be fine. We'll get it figured out. We will figure this out. Okay, so we're going to set Kerbin as our target. And we're going to set a maneuver here. Well, actually, let's just see how this lines up. Go ahead and warp to the periapsis, and we should see Kerbin pretty much exactly on the opposite side of Kerbal, the sun, when this is done. With a nice little green line to remind us that we're connected, as opposed to all this other junk that from other missions that I've been doing. Wow, this takes a while. I forget just how long it takes to warp when you're in the highest speed sometimes in Kerbal Space Program. So what we're going to try to aim for is a trajectory that is about... that passes close to Kerbin, but not close enough to be in the sphere of influence, because that'll be pretty close to what the 2047 pass is like. I'll tell you what, this is going to be boring enough. I'm just going to put a pause in here and we will continue. So after warping a considerable amount of time, I've come to a trajectory that will get us to where we want to go. And for just a little burn, it turns out that it was not nearly ideal. We don't want to intercept. There we go. So this is about as close as we can get without being directly influenced by the gravity, which is exactly what we're aiming for. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to save. And what we're going to do is we're going to do two different approaches, as I mentioned in the other note. One approach is we're going to launch about the closest approach. We'll probably do it almost exactly at the closest approach time, and we'll try to intercept here and then change the orbit to come back. Now, we're not actually going to build a grabber. I'm just using Kerbal Space Program to get an idea of what the delta V cost is. And the second one is to do a direct intercept, where we try to come in here. This orbit's actually really good because it is just a little bit off of the 1.5-year orbit that that the real Tesla Roadster has around the Earth. Around the sun, I mean. Okay, so I have the two missions. I think I will just launch How do I want to do this? How much fuel does this thing have? I think what I'm going to do is to launch 2 different targets at about the same time because they won't have the same kind of motion, and we'll see which one does a better job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warp to right here, and I will put a cut in so that you don't have to watch that bit. So we've reached the distance from Kerbin that we're going to start doing our maneuvers. You can see here we're not quite at the closest point, but we're within a few days, and so we're going to start testing some things. You'll also notice that I cleared up a lot of the junk that was just kind of lying around here because there was just too much stuff. So this will be a little bit cleaner, and hopefully this will work out. So this is the test target that test mission that I've chosen to do. It's nothing special, but one thing of particular note is the amount of delta V that it has of 3560. So 3560. So we're going to use that to determine how good of an intercept this is, and ignore this debris that's around here. From another test in the same profile, I need to start using some more. So the first attempt that we're going to do, a little bit tricky, we're going to try to do the direct intercept. So we're moving in this direction. Let's set this as our target. And it doesn't actually have the closest point to Kerbin. That's okay. So we're moving in this direction. We know we need to pick up speed a little bit to make it work. So let's go ahead and add our maneuver. Whoops. That was a little bit out of plane. And again, I'm only trying to get the numbers roughly with this. So we're trying to do an intercept close to Kerbin. It might not be perfect, but it's okay. So what we're going to do is do a rendezvous. And then we're going to keep note of how much fuel it takes us to get there. A rendezvous meaning moving roughly 0 meters per second close to the target. And then we're going to see how much fuel it would take us to get home from there. Meaning touching the atmosphere. Okay, so what do we got? Not that close. Wait a sec. Now we can actually see from here. We can get a really good idea of the amount of fuel it's going to take. It'll take 970 to get there, which is not bad. It takes most of that to get out of just the sphere of influence of Kerbin. And then once we're there, we'll be about 600 meters per second difference. So it should take us about 1500 meters per second of delta V to make this work. Let's see if we can probably do a little bit better. If we try to leave... Whoops. Silly me. Let's try to leave about here so that we're going more in plane. So remember that was about 1500. Now, interesting, this is a slightly higher delta V, so the less efficient trajectory actually was more efficient. Let's keep playing around with this. See what kind of, if we can do a better approach. Yeah, this is pretty close, and so it takes slightly less fuel, but there again, our speed is higher. Continuing along this trend, interestingly enough. Okay. What are we gonna do? Well, we really wanted to have the direct intercept, which would be more like this. Notice that that intercept was still some time out. See, this just increases the speed even more of when we're intercepting. So the further we can delay this, the better the speed is. And even once we intercept it, we'll still be in this long trajectory. Although it'll be a little bit easier for us to do a return trip. So let's try the one that was a little bit more optimal. Now that we've done some playing around, we're not going to go for the absolute closest. Let's go a little bit further out. Notice, well, maybe you can notice it takes a little bit more fuel to get to this farther orbit, but the separation speed is slower the further we get out. So let's go ahead and try this one out. So I'm just going to go ahead and accelerate, and we will make this happen. Now, of course, sorry about this, you can probably hardly see this. I'll activate the engine, and then we will warp to the next maneuver, and it'll be pretty good. We'll see how close we actually are to achieving this. Insert some witty comment about waiting for a while. Let's go ahead and warp to here. That looks pretty good. Hey, that was a fairly well-timed burn. So it's amazing how much of a difference even just small tweaks can make. And what we're ultimately going to do is a much larger tweak. Okay, we've just barely left the sphere of influence. So this little tiny last bit will make all the difference in the world. So let's go ahead and slow down. Whoops. This is only maybe a meter per second, so I'm not too worried. In fact, we're gonna do something I usually don't do, and we're gonna throttle down the engine just to 1%. And barely tap it, and we're gonna try to get the absolute closest that we can get here. Still going down. There we go. So not bad. And we know that we can intercept here. We'll go ahead and do one correction burn. Well, let's try to do it before we leave Kerbin. Let's go at least 3 minutes. That'll do fine. It's probably out of plane. So if it's out of plane, this might be the best spot to do it. Do it later on. Oops. Yeah, it was out of plane. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just warp to our maneuver and we'll do this burn. Just a little tiny correction burn. I'm gonna hold steady on this and focus on watching this countdown. I don't know if you can hear it. There's a plane flying overhead right now. At the same time I'm burning, it probably mixed together if you can hear it at all. Very interesting effect for me though. Okay, so yeah, we're close enough. Since I'm not actually going to pick this up, we'll call this distance close enough. So let's go ahead and warp to our closest point. And then we'll try to get our relative speeds down to about 0. I find it very interesting to watch. I know that they're going to get really close, but you could hardly tell that they're going to get that close. Well, maybe you can. I was looking at the planet, but still. Let's go ahead and keep warping until we're really close to this closest point. Insert witty thing to say right now. I already used that joke once. I can only use it once though, right? Oh well. Oh, I forgot to increase my thrust limiter. Yeah, that'll make a big difference. How soon? Oh, a minute 50. Go ahead and push it to a little bit closer. You can see probably, yeah, the orbits are pretty similar at this point in time. We're only moving pretty slowly with respect to each other, but okay. So we're close. If I look in the normal view, let's turn that off. See if we can see it anywhere. There it is. Hi. So obviously you'd have to get a lot closer to do this, but look at our fuel. We've used roughly half of it. And of course you would need a little bit more fuel. So I'm just going to go ahead and jot down this number. Haha. Ignore this. So the amount of fuel we have left, 1878. And we started out with 3650. Okay. So what do we do next? Well, see, just for the fun of it, are we actually going to get any closer? Not really. Let's go ahead and take down the... I'll do the thrust limiter again. And we'll take down the speed to completely 0. Actually, tell you what, I actually kind of want to do a real intercept. Let's push it down. Let's get to within a kilometer. Just because I want to do full due diligence here. Okay, still 19 minutes. Can we see it anywhere? I don't see it. Oh well. We're close to it. That's what really matters. You know, I can still push this a little bit closer. With hardly any extra fuel to make a true 0 rendezvous. We'll hold the same kind of standard for the other mission that we're going to do. Yeah, there we go. 100 meters. That's more like it. 12 minutes. As long as we're consistent on our standards between the two missions, it should be pretty close. We'll take this all the way to 0. Wow, that's as close to 0 as we're gonna get. Okay, there it is. Hi. So at this point in time, we could pretty easily capture it if we wanted to. Okay, so how do we get home from here? Let me update my number. 1872. So we use 6 meters per second of fuel to get that much closer. That's well worth the extra cost. So let's set our new target as Kerbin. So we're a little bit ahead of it. Okay. So there's 2 ways that we could do it. One would be the direct path, and that's where we slow down. We don't want to slow down that much. Let's make sure that I'm in the right mode. Wow, it's really eating up the... Okay, so that's not going to cut it. We're pretty much moving directly away from the planet, so we would need to fire, directly toward the planet. And it would take an enormous amount of delta V at this point in time. So that's not really a great option. It's not a good option. So we could probably do it if we slowed... Well, I'll try it one more time. We'll slow ourselves down until we match Kerbin's orbit. Okay. Now, how close is our closest approach? Where is it? We're pretty much at the closest approach already. Yeah, this is getting to the point where Kerbal Space Program's not really as good at managing this as we could be. But however you do it, it's going to take a lot of delta V. Okay, so what are the alternatives? Well, let's add a maneuver out here in the future. And let's put it 1 orbit in the future. And the truth is this is probably going to be the same amount of fuel for either one of our intercept paths. So what we're going to try to do, if we do 1 orbit in the future, we should be close. I thought we would be closer than that. Tell you what, I'm gonna take a moment to figure this out exactly, so I'll be right back. So we are back now with what I've decided to do is to go back to the other mission because I have decided to wait for some time, and so I started playing with it, and I forgot to activate the engine on this. But I've gone ahead and got the parameters for this. Notice that it takes a little bit more fuel to intercept, and again, this one we're trying to do the distant intercept, where we're intercepting something close to near our maximum. It's not exactly perfect, but notice that we have a very close pass and we have 46 meters per second instead of the, what was it, 700-800 that we took, or even 500, the absolute best that we could do. So that's a huge difference. Let's go ahead and do this burn. And then we'll figure out how to get home. I think you'll probably be able to figure out, but it looks like this is probably the easier way to do the intercept as opposed to the direct method. Because even once you get out there, you're still going to have to do more burns to have the perfect intercept. And they're going to probably happen fairly close to the same time. The closer one could actually do the intercept now if it so desired, but it's not quite there. So we know it's going to take the same 30 seconds or so to burn as the other missions that we've had. Oh, this one's a little bit longer, so we're a little bit late, but not that much. It should be fine. It'll be fine. I'm going to go ahead and lock us on here and take this off. Okay. Okay, we just hit the escape. And I'm going to go ahead and limit my thrust. I'll go about 5% for now. Just to get this little tweaked number just perfect. Now I could have probably done a little bit better timing of this, but still, you know, look at the, whoops, should actually slow down. But just look at how close this is. I'm going to limit this to just one tiny notch. There we go. And let's go prograde again. Okay, that's pretty close. Now, we said that we would need to do the closer maneuver, so we'll do the inclination adjustment here. No, that's the wrong direction. Note that even just the tiniest change is huge. Okay, that will be close enough. We'll go ahead and do this thing. We still have the severely limited, which makes sense considering the very small change that we need. Go ahead and cancel that out and just pay attention to our separation distance there. And really what we want is this ascending node will come to be pretty much perfectly aligned. And now you see that we have it. Let's just add one more maneuver, see if we can improve this. I think if we go a teensy tiny bit retrograde. Yeah. And a tiny bit prograde. Now, the reason why this makes such a difference is the Oberth effect that I've probably explained a couple of times, but basically you get more of a impact the faster you're going. I can't get it any closer than this from this far away. It's too finicky. We'll just go ahead and do some of the real fine adjustment once we get here, like we did with the other mission. But notice here, 2467, probably 2400 is how much fuel we'll have left. That's 500 meters per second more than we had. Sorry for that flash a moment ago too. But it's 2400 meters per second more than we had with our other methods with doing the closer intercept, and it's still going to take us about the same amount of fuel to actually return. You could do it with a little bit less fuel, but not that much with the other way. Still have days. Put it in target mode. Now I'm going to have to increase the thrust, of course. Come a little bit closer. Let's go ahead and we'll put the thrust limiter to, I don't know, go with 10%. That sounds good. And we're going to do free mode. We need them to line up a little bit better. We can see that we're doing that as long as the number goes down. Good. You know what? Let's just slow some of our base speed down. We're going too fast. Okay, we'll get in a little bit closer. And you can see that we're increasingly getting close. We're within the 1 kilometer threshold that we set before, but let's go ahead and try for the same 100 meters or so that we had for our other mission. I think we might actually be targeted at the other mission, but they're basically the same orbit at this point in time. It doesn't really matter. You can see they actually have a visible difference, so we can push them closer together. And now we're right on top of each other. And you guys know this dance. Let's see, do we see anything out there? We should see both of the two objects. Whoops. I hit the wrong button, but that's okay. We'll even hold this against us, even though we're doing so much better. There we go. Okay, for all intents and purposes, we're right there. And you can see there she is. This is the other one of these class of ships. So we made it gain considerably less fuel. We have 2409. That's over 500 meters per second less. And we weren't going to gain much by doing anything. So all we'd really have to do from this point in time to get home for either one of these missions, they're in a 1.5 year orbit. So let's target Kerbin. And we will warp to the next periapsis. Which is going to take a long time, of course. And what we're going to do from there is we're going to try to time it so that we will enter Kerbin. I think I can plan the node. Yeah. We'll plan this out. It should just be a small adjustment because we're in the roughly 1.5 year period, although it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Let's move the node to the other side. I'll just do it here. Sorry, there's a little bit too much excitement going on here. Okay. You cancel. You just need to accelerate a little bit. And we have an intercept course, so a couple 100 meters per second. This could have been done earlier, and it would have resulted in a closer intercept. And let's just go ahead and warp to this maneuver. And we'll go ahead and do it and show how much it's done. But it takes another just a couple 100 meters per second. How much this will take will vary on how exact the match is, but it's probably going to take something like this. If you'd done this in orbit earlier, it probably could have done for half the amount of fuel. So we'll generously say that the early mission could have done this with half of the delta V. So 120, whereas this one takes 240. And it still comes out to be a significant savings. So bottom line is we can finish this mission out, but actually let's turn the thrust limiter to half. Did I cancel the... Oh, I did. Bother. Oh, I don't want target, I want orbit. There we go. By the way, this 1.5 year period, it's one of the cool tricks you can use to having something close to the free return approach that was used to get to the moon, to get to Mars. The best thing to do would be a 2-year period. So after 2 years, you will come back to the same spot. Let's set our thrust limiter down a little bit at this point in time. No, that's not the one that I wanted. I think that's an intercept course, maybe? Let's focus on Kerbin. Yeah, that is an intercept course, which of course we wouldn't want to do, but you get the point. This can't land as it is anyways. But it just takes, this is how you would go about doing it. So the estimated time for a mission to retrieve the Tesla Roadster would be about 3 years. You want to launch when it is close to Earth, near one of the closer points to Earth. You want to try to intercept it near the Apoasis. And then from the next time you hit the perigee, you do an adjustment such that you enter the atmosphere of Earth next time, and then you have yourself a nice shiny Tesla Roadster that's probably not very shiny anymore. So that's how you do it. I'll do some number crunching in the post video, but we'll see you there. So here's the numbers that I crunched from before. You can see it's not even close. The best thing to do is to, like I said, launch when you're close to Earth. When the Roadster's close to Earth, intercept it when it's near its furthest point and bring it back. You'll save a ton of delta V. The mission time, it's going to be about 3 years. That'll be longer than most BFR missions, but it's still entirely doable. I suspect if you translate this will be something close to a little bit more than a mission to Mars. So I'm not entirely certain that the BFR will be able to do this. It could certainly launch something, though, that is capable of doing the mission. It might be possible that they launch something, capture the Roadster, have it enter Earth orbit using its own propulsion, and then have another BFR come and capture it, or who knows what they could do. But there's a lot of different things that you could do to make this work. It'll take some work, but it's doable. So anyways, let me know whatever questions you guys have, any comments about the Roadster, about whatever, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can through a video or just the response in the comments. So if this is right, in 2050 we could have the Tesla Roadster in some kind of a museum, so most of us alive might be able to see this thing again. No doubt if they capture it, it'll end up in the Smithsonian Museum in the United States or something like that. So for now, keep on tracking, and we will see you next time. Take care.